There's been some YouTube geniuses lately with a big following claiming that sodium-ion batteries are a myth, that they will never really be a big thing, and that you've all been defrauded by the Electric Viking, telling you sodium will, well, take a lot of the EV market, but more so the energy storage market. However, it's a very interesting article here at Clean Technica written by Tina Casey. I want to share with you what she had to say. YouTube's new algorithm means that you're often not getting all of our videos in your feed. There's 7,500. I'm pretty sure you're probably not seeing a lot of them. In the description, there is a link to our newsletter. Click on that and you can get an update every day of all the latest news in the electric car industry. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm Sam Evans. You're watching the Electric Viking. Tina says this: like zombies rising from the grave to devour the living, old coal power plants have begun to shake off the dust, adding to the burden of skyrocketing electricity costs in the US. It's true. Electricity prices in the US have gone crazy in the last 12 months. Not to worry, they won't last long. The so-called national energy emergency that promised new life to the nation's fleet of aging and expensive coal power plants is already evaporating under the weight of new sodium-ion batteries and other economic energy storage systems that take full advantage of the nation's abundant economical supply of wind and solar energy. But by now, everyone knows that wind and solar, especially solar, are the fastest, most accessible, and most economical domestic energy resources available in the US today, with energy storage systems adding to the mix. Now, a lot of Americans still think, and Australians, and probably Europeans possibly as well, I don't know, that nuclear is what we should be doing. We should be building these small modular nuclear reactor power plants that I've done numerous videos on all around the world because they are a genius solution, but they don't really work. There's none really happening in operation yet. So at this point in time, they're the real myth, whereas sodium is actually the real thing. That explains, says Tina, why renewable energy has been the overwhelming choice for new capacity additions in recent years. The numbers do not lie. In the first half of this year, for example, renewable energy resources accounted for 93% of new capacity additions to the US grid, for a total of 30.2 gigawatts, with solar and energy storage projects accounting for 83%. In China, the numbers are even more stark, and in Australia as well. I mean, in China, these numbers are crazy because China added, I think, 16% more electricity demand to its grid in the last 12 months, but its actual emissions went down. Anyway, all else being equal, says Tina, wind and solar capacity additions will accelerate as energy storage systems drop in cost. The first half of that equation depends on which way the winds of federal energy policy blow, but the second half is a matter of innovation and investor engagement, and that is where a fresh burst of clean tech activity has already materialized. Now, much to the probable dismay of these YouTubers claiming that sodium ion is a myth, in recent years, researchers have been focusing on sodium ion tech as a more economical alternative compared to lithium ion batteries, particularly in the US, because lithium iron phosphate is not really a thing there, only in small scale. And the reason is that, well, sodium batteries are definitely cheaper to produce. If you're manufacturing both sodium batteries and lithium iron phosphate batteries at the same scale, sodium is cheaper. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to work this out, especially when CATL, the largest battery factory in the world, has confirmed this numerous times. They're saying the cost is around 30% less, but they're also saying the cost for sodium-ion batteries within the next few years will fall to around $19 per kilowatt hour. That's a number from them. And today's cost for lithium iron phosphate is about $55 to $60 per kilowatt hour, meaning there'll be a fraction of the cost within a few years' time. Advocates for a sodium-ion future, says Tina, suffered a setback earlier this year when the high-profile US startup Natron shut down operations at its North Carolina factory and its Michigan headquarters, which really sucks. However, other sodium-ion innovators have already picked up the torch. Among the torch bearers is the US energy storage firm Peak Energy. The startup launched only 2 years ago, but it came into the sodium-ion scene with a head start in experience among senior executives, including from Tesla and Apple, as well as the leading global energy storage firm Powen. Peak energy surfaced on the clean technical radar when it burst out of stealth mode in October of 2023 with a business model based on vertical integration and a cost cutting passive cooling system. And I mean, this is one of the biggest advantages of sodium ion batteries, right? Passive cooling. They don't need all the cooling fans that lithium batteries need. Plus, the other advantage is in North America, they're perfect. In really cold temperatures, not that North America is always really cold, but it certainly can get that way. In those temperatures, these batteries work much, much better than lithium ion, well, than lithium ion phosphate or than NMC batteries or NCM batteries. They're cheaper as well, like I said, but they also last a lot longer too. Peak Energy in July of 2024 nailed down 55 million in Series A funding, spearheaded by the Zora Innovation branch of Temasek, along with existing investor Eclipse and strategic partner TDK Ventures. Newcomers Lockheed Groom, Tishman Speyer, Tech Energy Ventures, Doral Energy Tech Ventures, and DETV Scania Invest also supported the Series A round. Peak Energy claims its sodium ion battery tech can offer advantages in cost, supply chain security, scale, and safety over lithium ion, the industry's current default battery storage choice. So there's a lot of advantages. The funding is also expected to lay the groundwork for a domestic gigascale sodium ion battery factory slated to open in 2027. One advantage of sodium ion batteries is that, well, they're coming for the low hanging fruit, which are coal power plants. Sodium ion tech over other formulas has an advantage in its scalability, and Peak already aims to put that to the test. Earlier this year, the company launched its grid scale sodium ion system into the market, and last week it announced plans to build the largest sodium ion battery in the world in partnership with the up and coming independent power producer Jupiter Power. That's quite the story when you consider the fact that Peak Energy are, you know, pretty small fries in comparison to CATL. The initial agreement calls for a 720 megawatt sodium ion system to be delivered to Jupiter in 2027. Now, I'm not talking about Jupiter the planet, I'm talking about the energy company. With Jupiter holding an option for another 4,000 megawatts between 2028 and 2030, Peak estimates the total value of the contract will be over 500 million. As to what sparked Jupiter's interest in a new energy storage platform when the old one was working so well, Tina says there is always room for improvement. In addition to its existing portfolio, Jupiter has a 12,000 megawatt pipeline brewing in the US, and Peak Energy promises to deliver more bang for the buck. Peak's sodium ion batteries promise less degradation over their lifetime than lithium ion phosphate and reduced operations and maintenance costs compared to any lithium systems on the market today. That's what Peak says anyway, putting the 20-year improvement at 30% compared to other systems. And that's similar to the data that I've heard as well. Lower system degradation can also reduce augmentation requirements, meaning operators will not have to add additional battery units or components over a project's lifetime in order to maintain storage capacity over the product's lifespan. Peak also draws attention to its passive cooling system, which enables it to bypass fabrication, maintenance, and repair costs typical of lithium-ion systems while reducing auxiliary power costs by 97%. So not having to have these cooling systems, which cost money to run, makes them more efficient. Against the backdrop of falling costs for wind, solar, and utility-scale energy storage systems, Tina says it's difficult to see how any coal power plant in the US can survive much longer. The coal industry was already bending under the weight of low-cost natural gas in the early 2000s, and now renewables and energy storage have added to the pressure. In addition, coal power does not necessarily meet the oversimplified, underdefined reliability standards set forth by US President Donald Trump's own American energy dominance policy. Not that Trump could care less. The 932 megawatt Sandy Creek coal power plant in Texas, for example, suffered a catastrophic failure in April, and restoration is not expected until March of 2027, by which point renewables will be even cheaper again. And the projected cost of renewables in the future will have come down once more. The pace of coal retirements, though, says Tina, is complicated by existing grid conditions and rising electricity demand, among other factors. In February, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission reported that the US grid would drop 8.1 gigawatts of coal power this year in scheduled retirements, including some of the nation's largest: Intermountain Power in Utah, which is 1.8 gigawatts, J.H. Campbell in Michigan, 1.33 gigawatts, and Brandon Shores in Maryland, 1.27 gigawatts. However, by February, the wheels were already in motion to push the Brandon Shores closure back to 2029. Of course, that was Trump. The new date was reached under an agreement between the plant operator, Talen Energy, the Maryland Public Service Commission, who had their hands tied behind their backs, local ratepayers and utilities, and the Sierra Club, among other stakeholders, pending a major upgrade to the regional transmission system. In addition, coal retirements are not necessarily replaced by renewables. The Intermountain capacity, for example, will be replaced in part by a new gas power plant. In May, US Energy Secretary Chris Wright also shook things up when he summarily ordered the J.H. Campbell facility to keep running 90 days past its scheduled retirement date of May 31, an order later extended to November, despite the massive costs that it's incurring on a daily basis. The J.H. Campbell order is just one piece of the coal puzzle. Last spring, the Energy Department announced that coal projects will share in a new federal low-cost loan pot of $200 billion. Coal projects. And in October, Energy Secretary Wright announced a new round of $625 million of funding specifically aimed at coal, including $375 million set aside to recommission and retrofit old power plants. It's just economic insanity. Coal industry stakeholders have begun to respond to the new incentives, but one thing is for sure: the sun will rise and the wind will blow long after the current occupant of the White House leaves, or croaks it, leaves office as scheduled on January the 20th, 2029. When he does, a new generation of reliable, economical energy storage systems will be ready to restore the momentum to the renewable energy transition in the United States. I'll put a link to the original article in the description below. Thanks for watching.